and welcome to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I'm so excited that you're joining us today. We are going to have a fascinating conversation as usual as we learn from people all around the world at all ages and stages of life. Stay tuned as we shift our dementia care from crisis to comfort.
Here we go. What you think about, you will bring about dementia change. We will.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Alzheimer's Speaks Radio. I'm your host, Lori La Bey, and I'm thrilled you could join us today. If you are new, Alzheimer's Speaks is about sound information, not just sound bites. We're here to serve you. So if there's a service, a product, a tool, a topic you think we should cover, please reach out to me at radio@alzheimersspeaks.com. And maybe, just maybe, you can be our next guest. Everyone is welcome at all levels. We don't think we can make sustainable change without that. I would also suggest that you check out our website, alzheimersspeaks.com. There we have one whole section that is just full of free educational resources. You can also check out our book, Betty the Bald Chicken, Lessons in How to Care, which isn't necessarily dementia specific. It works for any time you just don't feel like you fit in. It's written as a children's book with questions in the back. I've had all ages write to us on how powerful the story is and that it should be a book that everybody has in their own home. Even in HR departments, libraries, psychologist's office. It's just one of those things that can make you go inward and look at the power of yourself and how you impact others and how others impact you. And you can also visit our public events section in the free educational resources. There you'll find information about an upcoming event with Shamuel and Spiro 100. They're doing 5 different events in June in celebration of Alzheimer's and the longest day. And then last, I just want to encourage you to also go to Dementia Map. It's a wonderful resource. You'll find events, all kinds of things there. It's free to use. You don't have to give any personal contact. And if you would like to be listed in there, you can reach out to me or just go ahead and sign up. We have both free and paid plans. Now, today we are going to be talking about being valuable, not vulnerable, and how that needs to change in our communities, how we view people. And our guest is Jeremy Golden, who is based out of Dublin, but he goes by Jem. So let me go get him. So Jem, I'm really excited to have you with us today. Let's start by having you tell our audience who's Jem, what you're up to, and how'd you get in this space?
Sure. Thank you, Laura. Yes, I'm Jem Golden, and I live in Dublin in Ireland, and I've lived in Ireland. I'm not Irish, as you could probably tell from my accent. It's a British one. But I've lived in Ireland since 2006, so quite a while. And I have various jobs or vocations. One is I lecture in University College Dublin, which is the second largest university in Dublin. And I lecture on disability and social inclusion, universal design. And I also mentor postgrad students on dissertations around topics, often similar topics around disability, aging in place, various issues around aging in society, stigma, and so on. But I also work as a business consultant, analyst, analyzing trends for companies who want to do business, I suppose better understand market trends around aging and what that means for their business. And then my last job, I suppose, is to work as an analyst and writer. So I do research and interviewing academics and others who are leaders in their field in aging, gerontology, similar kind of topics, cognitive, protective behaviors and patterns of life in order to enhance their cognitive well-being. So, sorry, it's a rather long answer to your question.
Well, it's a nice variety. You've got, and I think that's great because then you have your fingers in a lot of different areas, and I think
For sure.
one overlaps with the other all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, let's start with, asking the question I ask everybody on the show. Have you been personally touched by dementia in your own family or circle of friends?
Right. I have. My mother-in-law, who lives in Dublin, also not Irish originally. She's Swedish German, and this actually is relevant in that she has her name's Anita, and she has quite her cognitive faculties are very compromised, and she has many issues with memory and all kinds of things. But also, physically, she's quite strong and fit. So it's a kind of strange and difficult combination for anybody. But also my uncle, who I was he's died now, my Uncle Dan, who was a writer and academic, a big figure in my life growing up. He had Alzheimer's, and so I kind of saw that development with Dan from the very beginning, because he was such a, for want of a better term, a switched on, very intellectual man, incredibly articulate, to an intimidating degree for some, not to me, because I just had a good relationship with him from a little child, really. But then seeing the slippage, and then all of us kind of realizing, gradually what this actually meant, and then following his path, it definitely brought it all home to me in a very very deep way.
Is it because of him that you had your interest enhanced, regarding cognitive issues and protection?
Yes, I think so. Yes, probably not consciously, but unconsciously, I think, with Dan's dementia and his cognitive decline and all the things that happened, but also how it affected his children, who, again, my cousins, I'm very close to. I'm still very close to. I think you're right, Laurie. I think it was something that, of course, I was aware of Alzheimer's, and my grandfather had it, but none of his siblings did. Dan had it, but my mum, his younger sister, didn't have it, nor did the other two brothers. So, yeah, I kind of thought about it a lot more after that.
Yeah, I think you had mentioned about you don't think it was necessarily conscious, and I think that really happens in life. These little important things kind of stick in our craw and make us realize, boy, life needs to be different here, or this is what I really want, and how do I enhance this? I know I had that happen. My grandma, my great aunt, my mother, it was just little things. And then my work and the disabilities, my work with seniors kind of all led me to where I am today, And I never realized that until I had a friend actually say, everybody should look back at their life in 5-year segments and write down who was an important person or what was an important event. And when I did that, I was shocked. It was like, well, of course I'm here. This makes total sense. So that's just an interesting exercise for people.
It's a really good exercise, actually. I'm going to make a note of it because and also to get others to do that. I think it's very it's really good. I mean, I think I read. I'm by no means. I'm not a medical person. I'm not a scientist. I mean, I read. I'm very interested in the mind and the brain from all points of view. I mean, I don't need to tell you. I mean, you're an expert, but I think the discourse around Alzheimer's and the sort of in the news, the media, and Ireland is a good kind of representation of that as a very fast aging society, and all and so on. Is that I was kind of I found the alarmist rhetoric about Alzheimer's very difficult because there was no equivalent illness or disease or pathology where the language that was being used was very kind of extreme and negative, really frightening. And so I think, again, unconsciously, I thought I want to kind of think about that and maybe redirect, this language that's coming out. I mean, for example, a tsunami of Alzheimer's. It's, I mean, leaving aside the kind of tasteless analogy of a health crisis as a tsunami, I felt it was wrong, and there was very little to counter it. So I think that's also part of my mission, if you like yours.
Yeah, well, it's interesting when you said, because that's always driven me crazy, and that's one of the reasons I stepped in was the negativity and the fear, the helplessness, and then give me your money. Was kind of the big thing. But what are you really doing for us? And granted, everybody wants a cure, but people, I don't care what your circumstances are, if it's dementia, if it's mental health, if it's cancer or some other chronic illness, you need a plan. When there's a tsunami, when there's a natural disaster, there's a plan of where to go, what to do, and those steps are missing. And people can say, well, you go to the doctor, and I'm like, yeah, but you go to the doctor and there's nothing there. You get a pill and a prescription, and maybe the Alzheimer's Association or the Alzheimer's Society or the Alzheimer's Foundation, maybe. And then you're on your own really for a year to try to figure this out. And I know as a family member, we didn't even know of the Alzheimer's Association. We didn't know what to even look for. So we've got a long ways to go. And
no, that's right. Because a lot of I mean, there are some good things coming out of Ireland. There have been changes. I mean, for example, there was a big and very successful public health campaign on Alzheimer's on television and so on, which a lot of people still watch, regular TVs, and called Understand Together. And it was very short, sort of very humane and sort of empathic campaign. And I think it made a big change to removing stigma and fear. So that's a good thing. But then there's as you say, Laurie, the kind of the practical elements of helping carers as well as people that in early stage dementia. And it's that, like I said, I mean, in Ireland, I think Ireland is pretty typical of what's going on in Europe. There's there's a lot of rhetoric about it. We need to do something, and there's statements from the medical professions and from all kinds of places, and it's reported on. But then, and conferences, endless conferences. But I kind of feel also some of the changes that could be done, or the improvements to start to put in place for this, could actually start straight away. But they're thinking always in this very big cataclysmic way. And it's actually, let's start this on a local level and see what we can do, and what's worked in other countries, who can we learn from, and on and on and on. And as I said, I have seen some definite signs that give me sort of grounds for optimism in a low-key way. But they're not really planning for this in a centralized way.
I agree. One of my biggest frustrations, and again, my mom's been gone since 2014, but she lived with the disease for 30 years.
Wow.
And upon autopsy, just for clarification, because some people go, there's no way she lived that long, but upon autopsy, she had Alzheimer's, Lewy body, and some Parkinson's. All, lucky her, she got the trifecta. And though we didn't see the signs so much of the Lewy body or the Parkinson's with her, but the neurologist said he had never seen a brain so atrophied in his life. And he's been doing this since the 70s. and anyways, what I wanted to say was, we were really lost at that time. And one thing that I always wanted was like a resource directory. It's like, why isn't there a resource directory? So to try to combat what you're talking about, Dave Friedrich, who has the Memory Cafe directory, and I created Dementia Map, which is a free resource for anybody to participate in. So anybody around the world, we have like 150 categories. We'll make more. We want to work collaboratively. There's also paid plans if people, want more exposure, but it's a really easy way for people to access. And we want to bring in the divide of the profit, nonprofit, and government agencies, because they all kind of stand as their own pillars, which the general public doesn't know, and say, just join us. Just let's make it easy for people to find you. And what I've found so far is we have more small to mid-sized businesses, because the big guys still think that they have it all, and people are finding them, but they're not hearing what I'm hearing. What you're hearing, what we're seeing is that it's too complicated, it's too difficult, and it doesn't have to be. It can be really, really simple. And all Dementia Map is really a spot where people can get direction, they can learn of terms that they've never heard of before. But it's all about simplifying and meeting the end user's needs, getting the numbers out of the way, getting all that stuff, and our preconceived ideas, but actually listening to what people are saying. And I think that's where things are missing the mark. Here in the US, I mean, they have put, I bet it's millions of dollars into a campaign, and I won't mention names, but to get a medication approved that was rejected. And it is just obscene at how things are being manipulated when people step down from our FDA because of ethics, saying this is not a safe product, this doesn't meet our standards. And they're still pushing it through. Now, there's stuff coming out that, somebody received money for that. And it's like, well, of course that's happening. I mean, that's the way big business works on a lot of levels. And it's really sad, because I just think, gosh, if they would just take even a portion of those funds, really listen, and then simplify things. And sometimes that means, even with our technology, not always following the lead of the techie guys who want the biggest and brightest and fastest, shiniest moving part there is, because that's what's leading in the industry. But really look at, what does your end user want, and is that going to help them, or is it going to complicate their process and make them more frustrating? It just blows me away that isn't really seen or heard or appreciated, and move forward with. Do you feel that way too? It just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I mean, as I was saying, Laurie, I think with with the situation in Ireland, it's probably very similar in the UK. I spend a lot of time in the UK as well. I have a lot of family here and so on. I do feel that, I mean, leaving aside the whole sort of medical pharma side of it, I do think that the experts in the gerontology, Alzheimer's field, and the whole kind of supporting infrastructures for it's still very big. It's very much focused on big targets, big ambitions, which is okay as far as that goes. But as I said, I think, and we agree. I mean, there is a lot. If you've got a budget of billions or huge budgets for dementia planning of different kinds, if you could allocate, think small and small change and what that could be, and use some of that funding in that way, I think could be exceptional. I mean, to give you an example, like I know that many people in early stage or even in mid stage, later stage of dementia, they very much want to stay within their community, do local things, do things they like, going for coffee, maybe going to the shopping mall with their grandchild and hanging around the shops and all those kinds, just doing regular stuff. And so how can they get retailers to be dementia aware? What does that look like? Or another example, the hospitality or the hotel industry. Are they ways that they can train staff to kind of deal with people who have memory issues, as well as maybe helping orientation within the hotel or the whatever the kind of premises is? All that, yeah, those things are not that complicated really to do, and but they're not really thinking about that. They're kind of thinking about clinics and big, just quite a medicalized mindset, I suppose.
And yet, even with the medical mindset, the hospitals and the clinics aren't trained.
No,
their own staff isn't even trained, and we expect that as a consumer. We expect them to understand and know what it is we need, and it's amazing. I know when I first started getting into this, I listed out 4 dementia-friendly categories. One was businesses, with an increased contact, like the medical conditions, the doctors, the nurses, the pharmacies, the clergy, even financial planners and senior housing. But then there were the businesses of everyday life, the grocery stores, the bakeries, the coffee shops, the gas stations, the banks. And then I had the category of businesses of power. So the legislature, the media, the clergy, county workers, city workers. And then it was, the 4th category was comfort and entertainment and balance. Beauty salons, the fitness centers, the hotels, the parks and recs. So much of that, it just kind of blows me away that this isn't incorporated. I've always said what's good for dementia is good for the world, because bottom line, it's about respect.
It's about respect.
It's about respect and inclusion. And, I think our world has just, it's sad to say, but we've lost respect for one another. It's all about just me, and my behaviors don't affect anyone else. Well, yeah, they do. Yeah,
Yeah,
they do.
no, they do, and also, I totally agree, and but also empathy and imagination. It's like, I mean, Ireland is people in Ireland are generally very good to each other. It's a very kind of relational society and they greet each other, they greet strangers at bus stops. How you doing? So I think there is all that, but then there is a kind of, as you and I know well, this lack of awareness of the condition or I mean, the thing that I see so much of are again, it's kind of symptomatic of what we're saying, that just because someone is losing their memory, let's say, they still want to go shopping and they want to do their groceries and choose the food that they're going to have. But then they get to the cash till. I mean, they have a choice. Mm-hmm. They can either scan the stuff or, on the sort of the automated thing. I don't know how it works in the US. That's become very popular, but they're not going to go there. They don't know what's going on. And then, so these older, quite maybe vulnerable people then queue up at the cash till. And people are friendly. Do you want to go ahead? Please go. But then they get there and then there's, they're often trying to find things. They're confusing which card they're supposed to show. They get very anxious. Then they try to produce cash, but they haven't really got any, just a few coins. Go back to the car, and the thing is that the staff in the supermarket, they just think it's a bit of a confused. They have no real understanding or awareness of what's going on.
Yep.
And they are generally kind in Ireland. It's not that they're, but that's a good thing, but they don't know the rest of it, like what is cognitive loss, how do I deal with this? Should I actually maybe take their wallet and try and help? There's a lot of things going on there. That's just one example of everyday life.
Yeah, and money is very confusing.
It's very confusing, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole educational thing that could happen without, it's not about building clinics or it's about, as you were saying, Laurie, the everyday life interactions and transactions. How can we educate? How can we, there's just so many things that could be done.
Well, and it gets down to like one of the things that bugs me is giving somebody eye contact versus talking to the care partner, including them in the conversation, even if you can't answer. I mean, that's just a respectful thing. And maybe they'll just smile or not respond at all, but at least you're trying, because on a human kind of soul level, they know they're part of, sure. Instead of they don't exist. I mean, I had one care partner tell me he was so upset with a financial planner he used for many, 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 many years. Yeah. He just fired him. He's like, my wife is sitting right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you didn't say hello. No. You haven't given her any eye contact. You haven't included her in the conversation. No. She is part of my life, and this is half her money.
Yeah.
And if you can't get that basic respect out, I don't want to work with you. And the guy was shocked, absolutely shocked. But it's those things that, I mean,
you won't forget that conversation ever, I would imagine.
Yeah, but it's those little things that affect us on a heart level, that trigger a feeling of either joy or sadness of being included or not. Yeah. And we all, that doesn't get lost when you have dementia.
No, it doesn't. I mean, I've seen it's probably a very ambitious or expensive program. I personally don't think it's expensive in terms of ultimately, what it will save in inverted commas, but from a financial point of view. But I did, in my sort of academic role, Laurie, I did a qualitative study of an innovation in dementia care in a city in the south of Ireland, not Dublin, but Tipperary. And it was very interesting because they have what's called a dementia support worker. And in essence, the dementia support worker will take that person into the community for an hour or two a week. And so it's a bit different from, say, Alzheimer's Ireland or some other more large NGO. Not that those aren't important, but they're much more task orientated. It's about dressing and cooking and those things. But the dementia support worker that is part of this innovation project in Tipperary, that they're very different from anything else that I've seen, because they will build a bond, as you say, with that person that's often marginalized, and basically ask them, what do you want to do? And maybe they'll go for a walk if they're in a farm, they might walk around the farm but more often than not, they go into the community and they say, well, I want to go to my favorite coffee shop. I want to go to the community center. I want to, go to the choir or listen to the choir and all that. So it's been enormously successful. And what's so interesting about it is, and it's not just anecdotal, it's been studied, that it gives huge self-esteem and self kind of affirmation to that person, and gives them optimism and all those great things. But also it delays substantially institutionalization at a later stage. The difference between having the dementia support worker or not means that they're much less likely to decline as far. So there is a kind of, and they give their carer respite.
I was going to say, yeah.
Every week they know that the dementia support worker who's been trained, they have high-level nursing qualifications, but they've also been trained in dementia support, obviously. And so the carer gets respite, the individual that has dementia goes into their community, or sometimes they'll look at a photo album for an hour, or both. Look at a photo album, go and have coffee, and it's hugely beneficial. It goes without saying. So I'd love to see more of those.
Oh my gosh. That's relationship based, it's inclusive, right. And like you said, that whole respite care is massively, massively huge. How could that not build your confidence when you're isolated, typically, to have a friend? I think that's why my mom lived as long as she did. She lived 14 years in a nursing home, but staff were her friends.
Right.
That's how she looked at them. I went for a walk with my friends, and she was happy. It was really the last 3 years that were most difficult, I think, for her, in her decline, where her communication and her mobility, really limited things significantly. But what a difference that makes, to feel part of.
There might be, I don't know if, it's a big responsibility but I wonder sometimes whether there might be scope. It's complicated because of things like liability but whether there would be a way for more kind of partnering up of younger people with even just one friend with dementia that they could do something similar with. Similar to, and go out and about in the community.
Yeah. I know there's like kid caregivers,
Yeah,
Haley Richmond has, and
right.
they kind of go to people typically in communities, but we don't really encourage
No,
that community aspect. It's like, what sport are you in? It's those types of things.
yeah,
It really isn't about helping anyone else. Anyways, that's how I see it mostly here in the
yeah,
US. And
yeah,
I think we're really, really missing the boat. And it saddens me that we've gotten to be a society that is more worried about getting sued than helping somebody.
yeah, yeah. I think in Ireland it's somewhere in the middle. I think it is quite a, people live quite siloed lives in some ways, but as I was saying, Laurie, I think the nature of Irish kind of culture and society is inclusive. It's very relational. And I saw a big difference, say, when I moved from London to Dublin. And Dublin's a big city. I mean, it's not like some tiny little town. But immediately, everyone looks at what you were saying before. They'll look at you in the eye, and when they're speaking, whether it's a taxi driver, you look at the driver. There's and also that you try and find common ground, I suppose, even if it's for 10 minutes. You're not going to sit in silence. I mean, of course that happens. You're on your phone and you're busy doing whatever, texting or watching TikTok. But I mean, but still, I think there is that relational aspect. So that makes me more optimistic about the kind of you know programs and ways that initiatives to kind of support people with dementia and different aspects. But ultimately it will fall on the carer. It's usually a member of the family. It's usually, if not a spouse, it will be a woman, typically, not a man, like a sister, an aunt, and a cousin. The men get more of a free pass on this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we've seen that change a little bit here in the US. We're
Right.
seeing some of those numbers rise. I want to talk to you about music because I know you have some definite beliefs about music
Yeah.
and cognition. So why don't you share a little bit about that with us?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I I've always been crazy about music since I was, tiny. It's my earliest memory is probably listening to one of those old gramophone players with and watching my dad put the needle on for me and all that. And my family are all very into music, and I play not very well a musical instrument. I I noticed, again, it was an unconscious thing, I suppose, that I took up music, I suppose, more seriously, in inverted commas, in my 50s, like piano. And because my stepdaughter who I was bringing up, who's very, very talented, listening to her play piano. And I thought, I want to do that. So, but I was in my 50s, she was an early teen. And I did. I went to the same teacher that she did, to Lindsay, and got very into playing and practicing every evening. But I did notice that what a huge improvement it made in my concentration levels in other areas of my life. Things where I was getting a bit sort of I don't know, a certain slippage, I suppose, where in all different contexts. And then after I'd played, even for 15 minutes, because I was busy, what a difference it made to my concentration and my sort of awareness of things. So, yeah, and through that, I kind of read up, and through my own interest in cognitive resilience, I've been very struck at how powerful music is, not just to learn to play or to be a student of music, but just really listening to me, choosing music that you really want to hear, and ideally not as only as background while you're, but somehow listening in a more involved way has huge benefits. It's been shown time and time again, not only in terms of mood and well-being, but actually as providing some sort of resilience to all kinds of, providing, enhancing your brain's ability to function, helping memory, helping language, how you speak. All this has been shown through brain scans of regular music listeners. I wrote a little piece. I didn't do the research, of course, but it's a brilliant neuroscientist in the US, actually, called Luisa Speranza. I basically summarized a very academic piece and made it more accessible to non-specialists. And I put this on LinkedIn because I post a lot of these articles on LinkedIn. And literally there were thousands and thousands of reads and lots of very moving comments by people who were saying, when I had this happen to me, and by listening to music, I felt, especially when I was rehabilitating, what a huge difference it made to me. And they were saying, I'd always suspected that music was the difference, but until I read this article, I didn't realize that it was kind of proven. So I do, I think music is a huge thing for people to bring into their lives, or to do more of it.
I have a colleague and friend, Patty Carlson, who has the Alzheimer's Research Project going. You can just go to alzheimersresearchproject.com. But she has this numeric language of music program that is incredible. Right. And the difference that this program is making in people's lives is exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. After they're done playing, and she has just, she talks about music, language, numbers, and building relationships. Yeah. And the outcomes have been phenomenal. And anybody can play, even somebody more in their end stages can have their fingers put on the piano and their fingers pushed down, and they're seeing even results with that. Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. But kids with ADHD, people having difficult time with memory or studying, it's unbelievable. And she's like, I don't know what it is. She's like, it doesn't really make sense, but she's like, the stories we're hearing they're just incredible. Yeah. And so people can join the study and get the information of how to do this for free. It's so it might be something that you'd be interested in checking out.
Yeah, no, I would. Of course, I would definitely check that out. I'm so interested in, the music has that capacity to kind of provide emotional uplift and comfort and fun and movement and all that. But yet there's this other aspect to it, which is the sort of our functioning active brain. Things like, that there's a lot of crossover with language, but what's so interesting is you could be quite passive, and yet there's something about engagement with it that provides a kind of protection, a protective quality, which which is so interesting. I mean, I read an article today which is actually not about music. I'm sure you know about this, but it was published in March this year in a big journal. Sorry, it's gone out of my head, but I'll post it on your website. But the point being is that this is about having a sense of purpose in life as you get older, or what again, that it provides a huge. It's shown to provide not just protection, but to actually enhance the connections in your brain. I wrote a note here. It's called the dorsal default mode network, DDMN. So basically, a sense of purpose provides greater interconnectivity and functional connectivity. And the thing about a sense of purpose, which can sound quite grand and, like a sense of purpose, like some career purpose, it's not that at all. It can be that. It can be to do with work purpose, for sure, and wanting, but it can be things like, I know what I want to do and I do it, or I have a plan for the coming weeks and I'm going to do them in order or something. It can be about all kinds of things. So it's the difference between drifting or feeling like I've done everything I can do. I've had I've pushed myself enough. I don't want to, I just want to do this. I don't want to get involved and stuff, which is a lack of purpose, maybe understandably, but it's still a lack of purpose versus, you know what, I want to spend 10 minutes a day doing a language. I'm not good at learning languages, but I'm going to commit to it, and 10, 15 minutes. It's that sense of purpose that is hugely beneficial, not least for potentially delaying the onset of Alzheimer's.
Well, and I would think the sense of purpose of feeling like you can help somebody else, or you're in that relationship. If it's a small child, or if it's someone your age, doesn't make any difference, but that you're needed, that you have value, I think makes a huge difference as well. Well, I want to just take a break here really quick. And if you're just tuning in, we are talking with Jem Golden, who is over in Dublin. And this has been a fascinating conversation so far about being valued and not being vulnerable, and looking at how do we reduce stigmas, how do we engage people, how do we get relationship based, and it's been fascinating. So you might want to rewind and go back and listen more. You can always reach out to Jem at jeremy.golden@UCDIE. Or you can find him on his LinkedIn page as well. Now, Jem, I want to, ask you about another priority for you is about stigma and negative images, and we've talked about some of that. But do you want to talk about stereotypes that are out there right now, and how do you think we move forward with trying to crush those down?
Yeah, no, it's something that preoccupies me a lot, Lori, and I think it's something also in my upbringing in a positive way. That my parents were, whenever we visited our very elderly relatives when I was a very, very small child, it was all part of life, and it wasn't a question of we were taught to value them always, and be very respectful and polite and interested, and in particular, if they were struggling with words or repeating themselves, or it didn't make any difference, just the way my parents conducted themselves, this incredible sort of gentleness and kind of just really trying to listen and respond. So that's really stuck with me. And as I'm aging, my friends in their 60s, early 60s and stuff, it's less about us actually or what we're experiencing. I think it's more a kind of, as I said, the discourse in media is negative, is very negative. It's all about health crisis or and of course with the whole COVID thing, we won't go into all that. But I think it brought it all back to the fore. This idea of vulnerable rather than valuable, and it really I find it very upsetting, and because that wasn't the way I was brought up about, oh, they're so fragile, they're so they could fall. I mean, that wasn't really. It was like, no, we're going over to have a nice conversation.
Yep, and you help them through the process. I mean, walking or whatever it is. That's how I was raised too.
Yeah, exactly. So it's just part of my kind of mindset. But then how do you address these things in society and make people it's difficult. I think we live in a busy lives, siloed lives. I think particularly the way I mean, these are huge generalizations, of course, but I think the way that say younger people are their priorities, it's about self-projection and it's about having a good time and being your authentic self and all that. I actually connecting with multiple generations. It maybe on a case by case basis. Let's visit grandmother, but she's lovely. She wants to see. But I think in a wider connecting way, like listen to older people, value them. Don't obsess about frailty. Listen to what they have done and all that kind of thing. That is so missing in. I would take it even one step further, and I would say that for a parent or for someone talking to a younger person, they would think that by saying that they're almost imposing some kind of burden or hassle. Like, I'm really sorry to say this, or I hope you don't mind me saying, but I think, it's important to, if you see an older person struggling on the street or our neighbor who's, maybe you should offer to shop with them. I think they see that as, oh, no, I mustn't, that it's kind of, that's such, to my mind, that's base level human concern. But I think from society's point of view, it's like, no, they're young. We mustn't, it's an imposition. It's ridiculous, but so it starts from that level.
Well, and I remember growing up, I mean, we would shovel the neighbor's snow, cut the grass, check in, bring a meal.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a burden. It was just something we did, and we got to know our neighbors. Now nobody knows their neighbors. Everybody's scared of their neighbors. And you had talked about, with the young kids being their authentic selves. And I think sometimes they don't know who their authentic self is. So they're trying to be what they think they're supposed to be. Yeah. And, on social media, they're projecting this perfect life, even when their life's a mess. They've got a smile on their face and saying how great everything is. And, that creates all these mental health issues that we're having. And on the news last night, it was interesting. They just said, there's a turn where a lot of the younger generation is getting away from the smartphones. They're going back to the flip phones as they're seeing. And I wasn't quite sure how this works, but I guess a flip phone doesn't have all the internet stuff on it. but they said they are seeing the harm that it's doing to their mental health because everyone is so judgmental and people don't hold back. They just say mean, nasty things just to say
it is. Yeah. And also I think the I mean, if we're talking about, say, stigma, I mean, my kind of feeling about younger people actually is they are quite open to this, but it's more about the siloed nature and the sort of the kind of the focus to be individual and ambitious. I mean, those are not necessarily negative things, but you also have to look at wide society, and but also I think when they hear like we were saying early on in this conversation, Laurie, about aging society, tsunami of need, of and on and on. I think it's all it kind of brings in a negative reinforcement, I suppose. So there's all that stigma, but then there's the going back to this thing I said a few minutes ago about a sense of purpose. For a lot of older people, they want to continue to work in some shape or form, not necessarily a full-time position, but to be working, earning a bit of extra cash. But it's employers are hugely resistant to this. In the UK and Ireland, I think it's an issue across Western Europe. Where they, even if you don't say exactly on your CV how old you are, but you kind of you talk about your experience, and they kind of work down. They go, wow, this person is 58. We can't be hiring somebody. No, forget it.
You can be a Walmart greeter, or a food taster, one of those people in the store.
No, there's a massive discrimination in employment. I mean, there are a few areas probably a few sectors, I should say, where being older is maybe at least not a huge disadvantage, but they're very few where there's all this lip service paid about diversity. Again, it's one of those words that everyone chucks out because they feel we're diverse, we welcome candidates across the spectrum, the usual. It's simply not true, and none of it. They are. It's incredibly difficult for older people, and I mean, this is all separate conversation about this, but disabled people of any age. It's I mean, the discrimination in work is really difficult. So I mean, it's definitely it's a big task,
Well, and you look at, I mean, just even families, people who are diagnosed, they don't want to tell their employer if they have a diagnosis because they're worried about losing their job.
Right.
Even though things could probably be adapted and stuff to do that. And care partners don't want to say anything either because they're afraid they're going to lose their job because, they're caring for someone else. And then when you were talking about families kind of protecting their kids from, being part of aging really is what they're doing. They're denying them that. Well, what I have found in talking with the schools is the kids know what's going on. The kids want to help, but instead they're said, oh, we've got it handled. But they know mom and dad are going crazy, being the care partners. They know that they've gone kind of down a few rungs on the ladder in terms of priority. I mean, they're feeling all these shifts, and yet no one's talking about it. And then all these kind of bubbles of anger and frustration, and kids feel left out, and my gosh, they're so full of energy and they have such great ideas and they want to help, and we're going, no, you can't, and we don't even know we're doing it. Because
No, that's no, I totally agree. I mean, that's another whole area where, say, if we're talking about specifically around dementia care of maybe one of the parents or the young person's grandparents is living at home or close by, and is how to help educate the family and the parents and to involve the children. How can you do this?
yeah, because it's a societal need and it's a societal responsibility.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, caregivers, or care partners, carers, whatever you want to name them, are taking it on themselves, which is self-isolating.
Well, it is. Yeah.
And so it's not good on any level.
No.
To do that, because it's too much. And we all need help and support in little ways people can step in. And I know, like when I was caring for my folks, my brother said, they didn't come around because I was a control freak. And I'm like, no, I'm organized, and I didn't see how controlling I was. I wanted the best care and I knew they'd do it different. And not up to necessarily my standards. No. And it took me years before we had this conversation to realize that everybody has a place and everybody has a role to play. And, it's the old saying is, diversity is great in our lives. I mean, if everybody was a clone of us, that wouldn't be a good thing. And as long as they're not going to harm somebody, let them in to help, and don't think you are less than in terms of accepting that help.
No, absolutely, because I couldn't agree more. And I mean, I was talking a bit earlier about say my uncle, and I think what happened there was good. I mean, the children were very involved, but also the nieces and nephews like me, we'd all grown up with him, and it was a pretty open house. So even when my uncle was in the end sitting on the sofa lost in a fog, I mean, he was barely speaking, if at all, and the man that we knew had really, it was dimming, but it was actually, we were all talking, and sometimes he'd hear us and pick up on stuff and make a funny remark. So it was the fact that, as you said, that we were all coming in on, it was an open house rather than something very taboo and, kind of hiding him from the world. It was quite the opposite.
Yeah, it is. It's amazing when you sit back and really think how much things have changed, and
that's right,
and how unhealthy they've gotten for everybody. In this. Gosh, I can't believe we've been talking, over an hour already. Do you still have time to keep going?
I've definitely got 5 minutes. Yeah.
Okay. So in wrapping up, let's just talk. I want your slogan, valuable, not vulnerable. If you can just summarize that up really quickly.
Yeah, no, I will. Thank you, Larry. I mean, that was a slogan that was done in Manchester, which is a very progressive city in the north of England. Manchester City actually is probably in the news a lot in football because they've just won the double. I mean, Manchester, they have very progressive mayor. It's sort of a little bit like a city state in a way, because they do things differently from a very centralized approach. They have a very their mayor, Andy Burnham, is very inspirational, but they also have an incredibly interesting age-friendly city kind of projects of all kinds going on, from empathic environments to help older people navigate themselves around the city, to as you said, dementia cafes and just incredible things going on. But they sort of felt, yeah, but we still need to actually create a better understanding and empathy among the wider population. So they put up a lot of posters they had a public campaign saying valuable, not vulnerable, and they showed Mancunians, people born in Manchester, living in Manchester, older people who are working in fashion, getting PhDs, doing boxing in the gym, both boxing as students of boxing, but also trainers of boxing in their 80s, and on and on and on. So, and it was hugely successful. So I've kind of taken this away myself, and I've sort of said to, particularly when I'm talking to my students about things, and I'll say, think about valuable, not vulnerable. Think or put in uppermost in your minds, please, of the concept of the value of an older person, their experience, their advice, so many things. Don't think about. It's good if you also think and look out for potential frailties. If you're worried about them falling, that's a good thing. But don't think of that first. Think of the valuable aspect. And yeah, it's just something I really want to put across.
Yeah. And last, I just want to cover, you do a lot of lecturing on disabilities and social inclusion.
Right.
I guess I can see real easily how that relates to aging, but if you just want to sum that up for our audience.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I think it's important for the aspect of getting older and people who have disabilities, who've had lifelong disabilities, are very different things. And again, it kind of dovetails with what we were just talking about. There is that element of the wider society thinking about aging as a disability or acquiring a disability, the sort of inevitability of that, which is simply not true. I mean, my cousins, my mother's cousin's wife, Ella, who spent the last month in London and who I again love and adore and respect. She's nearly 90. She has no disability, and she's very impressive and just an amazing person. But I have people in my family who've had disabilities, physical and sort of mental, cognitive, from a young age. They're very different things. And so I do, when I lecture or give talks in different places about, I do separate the two out. But and also what I found, I talked to an academic who wrote a book about this in Ireland called Anne Leahy. I'll send a link to your listeners if they're interested about her book, which is a very original piece of work. I mean, she said it was very moving where the people that she interviewed who aged with a disability, where it was quite the disability, they felt the stigma and the difficulty of participating. When they got older, in some ways, they got more sympathy and empathy, because it was like that was people's expectation of what an older person is, which is kind of strange in some ways, but they felt less isolated. But I guess Laurie, it's part of this nuanced conversation and to the wider world of trying to put out there that, please be open-minded about what aging is. It's not necessarily disability and decline. It could be other things, good things, challenging things, but be quite open-minded about it is what I try to tell people.
Well, and I think no matter what age you are, there's growth that can happen. It might look
Right.
at different ways, but instead people are looking at this. They're projecting that there's going to be this automatic decline, and there might be in some areas, but that doesn't mean in all areas. So, well, what a fantastic conversation this has been. Thank you so much, Jem, for joining us today. In wrapping up, I just want to let people know you can reach out to Jem, and that's Jem Golden or Jeremy Golden on his LinkedIn page, or you can go to jeremy.golden@ucd.ie. And I want to ask our listeners to please share this episode with your friends, your colleagues, your family, your followers. All of us can help spread the word, by just sharing resources, products, and tools that can help others. And be a giver of hope. It takes seconds to do that, but this is a really important conversation. This is a shift that needs to be made. This is something that needs to be consciously thought about, and in order for people to really make some changes. So please join us in our cause and help spread the word. Thank you so much again for joining us, Jem, and I want to thank our audience for listening. Bye-bye. Well, hi, I'm Lori La Bey, and I wanted to tell you about Alzheimer's Speaks, which is another great podcast. You see, my own mother lived with dementia for 30 years, and I felt lost. Did you know every 3 seconds someone in the world is being diagnosed with dementia? Odds are it's going to hit your families too. We want to help you connect to services, products, tools, research, and stories so you can be prepared. Please subscribe to Alzheimer's Speaks on your favorite podcast platform.